Hey guys, this is Bismuth Hertz again. You may be wondering where I was. Well, I am a little sick. Yesterday I was very sick. Today I'm a little sick, but I'm not too sick to speak. And I wanted to speak about some lessons that I have learned with my experience. So, there is a document that has influenced me a lot. Where do correct ideas come from, right? This is Mao Zedong. Where do correct ideas come from? I'm just going to focus on this first part here. Do they drop from the skies? Now, I know people know where they get their ideas from, right? Right. A lot of people don't like to think about where you get your ideas from, so you act like it dropped from the sky. Like, say you're a Marxist, right? Why did you become a Marxist? A lot of people act like it dropped from the sky. They don't have a reason why it actually, made sense to them. They don't have a story, because the moment they tell the story, you become a human being, right? The moment I say, well, I became Marxist after this and that experience, or maybe you become a Marxist by arguing online. Maybe it was by watching a video. Maybe it was, you just read a book. I don't know, but it makes it sound weaker, right? And a lot of people will act like it drops from the sky. It didn't drop from the sky for me, but it almost kind of did. But that's not where correct ideas come from. No, they do not drop from the skies. Are they innate in the mind? No, that's even worse. That's even worse. A lot of individualism occurs where people act like, oh, I simply became Marxist because I'm just so smart. I'm just so smart, and I read Marx, and I realized that he was right because I'm just so smart. Because correct ideas are not innate in the mind either. They are not innate in the mind. They come from social practice and from it alone. They come from three kinds of social practice: the struggle for production, the class struggle, and scientific experiment. So now when you read this, you think, okay, so let's come up with an example of an idea, okay? Let's come up with the idea, the propaganda of the deed. Okay. So what is this? This is the idea that if you do something, other people will see that you did it, and they're going to also want to do it, right? But it's more fundamental than that. It believes, this is an anarchist idea, it believes that if, for example, if I go to Kenosha and burn down a car dealership, then this has now opened within the sphere of possibilities burning down a car dealership for the average person. Pretty much. That's like, maybe that's a more extreme example. Maybe it's if workers go on strike. If baristas go on strike, then for maybe rail workers, being exposed to the possibility of strike from these other workers has now opened up the possibility of, but it's the idea so that you don't have to propagate information, but instead you propagate your deeds, and that's more important than propagating information, right? That idea of propaganda of the deed, how can you prove that that is correct, right? How can you prove that that is correct? Well, it comes from three kinds of social practice. The struggle for production, for example, right? I don't think that that's very relevant. The class struggle, that is quite relevant. And scientific experiment. Now, when Mao says scientific experiment, he doesn't just mean a laboratory. No, he means like actually trying to collect data about the world more generally, right? But the class struggle and scientific experiment can actually give us an idea about whether or not the propaganda of the deed is effective. And for this, we actually have to look towards history. And we have to look towards what has happened to gather data. The Paris Commune gives us data, right? The Paris Commune was a wonderful sort of class struggle and scientific experiment that we can study to get information. Chaz, the protest Chaz in Seattle, gives us data about what is effective and what is not effective. We know that Chaz didn't achieve its aims, right? We know that. But in what ways, right, was it effective or not effective? Well, for this, we have to do more, class struggle and scientific experiment to know, and look towards history, the scientific data, this revolutionary data. Now, obviously, science occurs in context, right? One of the main things that a scientist does is look at what the external factors are that could be affecting the experiment. If you conduct an experiment at a very high altitude and it works, but then you conduct it at a very low altitude and it doesn't work, you have to think about the altitude. Well, same thing with these types of struggles. Dialectically, we cannot simply say that the Paris Commune would work in America the same way that it did, because it occurred under very, very different circumstances at another time and another place, right? So part of scientific experiment is to do this dialectical analysis. Do I think Chaz could have occurred in North Carolina? No, I don't, because there aren't enough hyped up leftists, right? Not like in Seattle, where there's a lot of hyped up leftists who really want this kind of thing to occur, right? And so what Mao is saying is that we should always look towards concrete examples, right? We should always look towards concrete examples, and we should always have an experimenting mind, right? In order to taste an apple, you have to bite the apple. And you should always have an open-minded approach. This is actually a big part of why I support infrared, not because I think their ideas are 100% correct, but I think that infrared is trying to create new ideas and is going to prove through these scientific experiments, these discursive experiments, they're going to prove what works, what sticks, and what doesn't stick. Infrared is doing innovation, and that's extremely important in politics. We should all be trying to do innovations and experiments, because we know what's been tried so far doesn't work. And sure, conditions change, right? Sure, maybe doing the same thing could actually have different results under different conditions. But we know that what is currently being pushed by the American left, it's not succeeding. We know that, which means that it needs to change, which means there needs to be innovation and scientific experiment. Now, this is also a type of class struggle. Don't think that just because you aren't organizing workers directly, that you aren't engaging in class struggle. That's completely incorrect. The nature of class struggle is both a battle for the minds and the bodies and physical, it's all there. It's all there. It's about people more than anything, right? And ideas are extremely important right now. So yes, even this YouTube channel that I'm running is a form of class struggle, which can yield correct ideas based on how my channel gets reactions, or how it maybe even leads people to action in the future. And we need to see things this way. That's why I like to pressure people like Thought Slime, and I know I'm too small to do it now, but that's why I like to pressure large creators to open their minds and engage in more experiments to get better data on what political lines are effective and what's not, what's going to move people and organize people, and what's not. It's extremely important to know. And this philosophy has always guided me throughout my political practice. So when I first was getting into politics, I joined the IWW. That was because there was an IWW representative in my workplace, right? And this man, he organized a lot of the workers there. He engaged in a more direct form of class struggle. And I was working in a call center called Captel, right? And at Captel, what happened, and this is extremely important. This is extremely important lesson that I can teach you based on my experience trying to organize Captel. Now, I know I could have done a much better job organizing labor. I absolutely know I could have. But what I learned is that workers, specifically in call centers, cannot be organized in the same way that the industrial workers of England, for example, could have been organized in the 19th century. They can't be organized in this way. Why? Because their conditions are good enough for them. That's why. And there's also something very atomizing about a call center. See, on a production floor where you're handing this and that to your coworkers, and you're communicating heavily, it's very different on a production floor. But in a call center, when you're all atomized, it's much, much harder to create this sort of collective identity as well. And these are lessons that I learned from trying to organize my workplace. These are very, very important lessons, and it made me realize that we cannot simply organize the working class on a common basis right now. We cannot simply do that. The objective conditions are not yet there. Now, this doesn't mean that I have deduced a scientific fact that the working class simply cannot be organized in America whatsoever. That is not the scientific fact that I have deduced. What I've learned is that workers who are in these sort of conditions which are good enough and atomizing enough cannot easily be organized. And it's interesting here, my job went away. I lost my job at Captel. How? Because it was automated away. My job was automated away. So this also tells you a lot about what happened there. Workers who don't feel essential, workers who feel replaceable, who feel like they could be automated away, are much less likely to stand up for themselves because they inherently understand that their job is not that important. They inherently understand this. So being in the IWW and trying to organize people taught me a lot about the truth of the class struggle. And it taught me a lot about this stuff. And if you guys really believe that we need to go organize workers right now, do it. Do it. I'm telling you, I think that you are wrong. I actually don't think it's possible to organize the American working class right now. I mean, there may be sections of it which you can organize. There may be the ability to get some kind of stake or power in unions like AFL or IBEW. It may be possible, but I don't think that that is the correct move right now. And that's what I learned through my experience. And that is a lesson that I can try to pass on to you. And I want to hear if any of my viewers have ever tried to organize their workplace. I would love to hear about it. I would love to learn about it. We need to have an open mind with this stuff. I'm not saying it's a dead end, but I have this scientific data, which I have now learned. And that's what we need to do, right? If you really care about union struggles, you need to have this sort of analysis. Now, being in IWW taught me this, but that was the main line of IWW, is that is what we need to do, which is why I left, which is why I went and joined PSL. PSL taught me different lessons about social practice. Some of these lessons, actually, the IWW had. The IWW knew, for example, about the protest cage. They opposed the protest cage. And when they saw that I was going into PSL, a lot of them warned me, hey, you're walking into the protest cage. Now, what do I mean? What I mean is this form of protest, which is very common, right? We're told we just need to go in the streets and yell. Now, when the IWW protest, they would always picket a workplace. They always went to a specific workplace, and then they would deliver a specific message with specific demands, like higher wages. And that was much, much more effective for making change compared to simply going out and yelling in the streets at something that only the government can do. The people in the streets think you're crazy because what what am I going to do? You're not telling me who to vote for. You're not telling me, even if you say boycott this product, buy this product instead, that's a much more concrete message. But when you just go out in the streets and say, end the blockade on Cuba, people look at you, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And the only thing you can tell them is, well, join us so that you can also yell about the blockade on Cuba. Well, that's the protest cage right there. That's movementism right there. You've got something where, you do want to make your voice heard. You do want to spread this information publicly. You absolutely do. And, that's a good thing. But it becomes the protest cage when it becomes this sort of dead end, this sort of energy suck. And by going to many different types of protests and trying to organize with different groups in PSL, I got more scientific data and more class struggle to give me these correct ideas, right? I didn't just go and read a book to learn that what PSL is doing is ineffective. I didn't just go and read a book to learn that what IWW is doing is ineffective. I went there and I figured it out for myself, what was effective and what was not effective. And that's what you need to do. Put your beliefs into action. Get off of your ass and figure out who is actually trying to push a successful version of what you believe in, who is actually trying to do what you believe in. Go work with them. Go learn what it really means to follow your dreams and to do what you believe in. Go learn it, because too many people, they have this fetishization of their ideology, where they make their ideas into something which they are not. They make their ideas into something which they are not. It's a form of idealism where the actual goal of their ideology is not to affect concrete political change of any kind, but rather the goal of their ideology is to defend their ideology. I am a Marxist, therefore I defend Marx. This kind of thinking. I am a Marxist-Leninist, therefore I defend Lenin and Stalin. Why? What's the point? And that's exactly the mistake that I see being made all over. And I think that this mistake is made worse in large part by the internet itself, right? We have a battle of utopias online, and we never meet each other in person to reconcile our differences with objective reality and with our own experiences. No, instead, we engage in this battle of ideas. And when people see my perspective, they have their ideology goggles on. This is the problem. They've fetishized their idea. And when I critique their idea based on my real experience, they simply don't know that I have this experience which informs me. They don't know. They can't see what I've seen. They can't do what I've done. And that's why I need them to go put their ideology into practice. Absolutely go do it. Now, with IWW, it's interesting because they wanted to organize labor. And with PSL, it's interesting because they advocated for the organization of labor. They had us read and pretty much go by what Lenin said in left-wing communism, which was that we need to work within bourgeois labor unions in order to make a change. They believed in it and they actually did it. PSL actually did do this stuff, but most of their time and effort went towards the protest cage. I actually think that if PSL and IWW didn't have this sectarianism against each other, which they seem to have, they don't want to work together, they don't believe in the same things, they both want to know better than the other organization how to do things the right way, right? They've let their ideological differences become a hurdle towards their collaboration and reconciliation. Right? And this atomization of knowledge is also a major issue. Because when you believe in one thing, then in order to substantiate your beliefs, you're going to view reality in a certain way and learn certain facts. But no one person can understand all of reality, which is why we need to come together and disagree with each other, but focus on that objective basis, right? This isn't debate class. This is real life. What's real is real. If I make a mistake, if I say something wrong, it's wrong. It's straight up wrong. And I need to forget it. If I adopt wrong ideas, I need to forget them. It's true. It's hard, but it's true. And in this social practice, right? In this social practice, ideas are tested on a scientific basis. But as you know about science, only one experiment is not enough. We need a larger sample size. We need more data, which means you have to go do what you believe in. Do what you believe in. It's true. Now, CPI also taught me a lot about social practice in its own way. I was able to bring some of the knowledge that I gained from being in other organizations to CPI. And what I learned from being in CPI was that you can reconcile Marxism-Leninism with Americanism to create an effective line, which brings in people that would otherwise not think in this way, which is very, very interesting. Very interesting, because many of the people in CPI are similar to me. They went to other leftist groups and they didn't, they weren't satisfied with them. Well, CPI is not exactly leftist, right? But it is communist, not in name, but it is communist, right? And what I learned from being in CPI was that there is another way of doing things. Now, my story with CPI is not over. The organization may have shut down temporarily, but my story with CPI is not over. And I've seen successes and failures of CPI. It failed to repel an attack. PSL would have survived that attack, but CPI failed to repel this attack. It's very interesting, right? Why did it fail to repel this attack? That taught me a lot. That taught me a lot. And seeing the public reaction to CPI is giving us lots of data on what lines work and what lines doesn't. One of the reasons why I really respect Caleb Maupin is that he is highly receptive to the public response to his ideas. And that's what we need to do, right? Not completely allow the public to decide what we can and can't say, right? Because if I say that Stalin is a great man because he defeated the Nazis, that may not be a popular fact, but it's true. So we're not looking for just popular facts, but what we're looking for is how people respond to our ideas. And the most interesting conclusion that I got from CPI, practically speaking, and this is something which, again, PSL and IWW seem to be totally ignorant of, but not totally, is that religious faith, Christianity, actually, and conservatism actually are more compatible with socialism and communism than leftism and social liberalism. They're actually more compatible with communism. And in IWW, there was some paradoxical things. One of the organizer that got me interested in IWW, the man that gave me my red card, right? He brought me to a random coffee shop. We talked about the IWW. He gave me my red card. I bought it from him, right? But that man was a Christian. He was Christian. Now, I don't think he had staunch conservative social values. I don't. But it's very interesting, right? Because I think that the more Leninist organizations are inclined to deny people's ability to be religious. If you have religious or conservative values, that's considered a problem. You're considered reactionary, this kind of thing. But if PSL and IWW both were made aware of this lesson, that extreme leftism is actually very dangerous and anti-communist. If they knew this, then they would also change their tactics. And this atomization of information is a result of sectarianism and idealism. It really is. I have a personality of wanting to bring people together. My frustration with PSL makes me want to attack them. But I'll admit it, if I could actually just work with PSL and get the people in PSL to realize some of these truths, that would be much more ideal. That would be so much more ideal. That's not the case. That is not the case, unfortunately. Now, let's loop back around a little bit. So here we have Mao's document, right? Where do correct ideas come from? They come from the struggle for production, the class struggle, and scientific experiment. Now, think about this a little bit. You can watch me and hear me say that I have ideas based in class struggle and scientific experiment, right? But it is man's social being that determines his thinking. Meaning that even though you're just hearing my ideas, you probably, if you're watching this, agree with me, and you may even have similar experiences, right? We draw people who are similar to us. We do. And, I think that you, just because you hear ideas and agree with them, doesn't mean they fell from the sky, doesn't mean they're innate in the mind. It's not true. You know what's true and what's fake in your own reality. You do. And the sin is not simply avoiding social practice or not doing social practice, because you can be a major bookworm studying history and learning all of these things. You can be going over data. You can be looking at existing struggles and piece together a reality without yourself doing any of this social practice. So it's not true that you need to engage in social practice to have correct ideas. But what is absolutely true is that many people allow their ideas to override the basis of social practice from which correct ideas come. And that is the main sin of socialists. That is the main sin of politics in America, which reduces what should be a struggle for reality into a struggle of ideas. Ideas which are disconnected from the reality they claim to represent, ideas which shape and change our reality into one that it is not. We walk around not thinking, am I right? We walk around thinking, how am I right? And that is a major mistake. That is absolutely a major mistake. This has been Hertz from Bismuth. Remember to like the video if you like it, dislike if you don't like it. Comment if you have something to add, maybe I missed something. Subscribe for more, and share this video around so that other people can get the message. See you next time.